Welcome to the Langside YouTube channel. My name's Johnny, and in today's video we're going to be talking all about the letters P and H when they are written in English. In other words, that little combination that makes the sound Now you may be thinking, well, we already have a letter F to make the sound F. So what is the point? Why do we have the P and H, which also make the F sound in words like photo, philosophy, elephant, etc, etc, etc. Why would we not just have an F for those words? And in fact, I was thinking about this, I cannot think of an exception where the PH in English, in modern English as it's written, doesn't make an F sound. I don't think there's anywhere it makes a P, and I don't think there's anywhere it makes any other sound. Please, if you can find one, put it in the comments, because I've been racking my brain, but I cannot think of one. And I didn't want to put it into Google AI before this because I felt that would be a little bit cheating. But I'm sure somebody out there is keen to do that and figure out whether I'm right or wrong on this. But as far as I'm aware, all the words I could possibly think of with P and H in them, they're all pronounced with an F. So what is the point of with a F? So what's the point of having a PH? Well, there isn't a point, really, because we could just swap it for an F. But there is a point, because the P and H tell us all about the history of that word. And specifically and particularly, they tell us that that word originated with Greek and then passed into Latin, because what happened is where the Greeks had a sound, which we're going to talk about in a second, that sound got transliterated into Latin as the PH, and then those words either came directly, and this is a very few of them, directly from Latin into Old English, or in the vast majority of cases through medieval French into English after the Norman invasion of 1066. And a few of them as well, actually, interestingly, from the Renaissance period through into modern, straight from Greek into English. So, what sound was this that the Greeks were making in these words? Well, actually, guys, it wasn't the sound F at all. It was the sound, or the sound F. It was the sound halfway between a P and an F. And it was the sound that the Latin speakers didn't have, but the Greeks used all the time. And that sound was something like the sound in the modern German word, where they also have this sound in the start of the word for horse in German, which is Pferd. Pferd. So you can hear it's like a P, like a P, with a F straight after it. So it's Pf, 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 Pf. Okay, so it's not Pferd, it's not Pet, it's Pferd, Pferd. Similarly, the German word for path is fat, fat. So it's not pat and it's not fat, it's fat. Now, because Latin had this, because Greek had this sound and Latin didn't, the Greek speakers were using their own letter for that. But the Latin-based speakers were like, well, it's not quite a P and it's not quite an H or an F. It's sort of halfway between these sort of sounds. So we're going to put a P and an H. Now, intriguingly, and quite obviously, potentially, if you start thinking about that sound is not particularly stable over time because it very easily slips into various other sounds. Particularly, it slipped in the case of English and many other European languages actually into the sound F. So instead of saying elephant, we say elephant. Instead of saying philosophy, we say philosophy. Instead of saying photo, we say photo. Intriguingly, some modern German speakers are doing exactly the same, with particularly some of the words that have an extra consonant in that cluster. So the modern German word for plant is Pflanz. But I was listening to the Easy German podcast a few weeks ago, and they were really debating this and talking about this in quite a lot of detail, which is fascinating because actually some modern German speakers are now slipping into saying Pflanz. So not Pflanz, but Pflanz. Now, I've never heard somebody who's German say Pferd instead of Pferd, but that is an easy possibility as well. So you can see how having that little breathy sound before the F sound is pretty unstable, potentially, and it could easily have slipped the other way as well. So instead of going for photo from photo, it could have easily gone to poto, or it could have gone to elephant, or it could have gone to philosophy. Now we're like, oh, that's really weird. But that's how sound shifts over time really, really, really easily. And if you're intrigued by that, I'm going to do several videos on this channel about sound shifts over the coming weeks and months. So please do subscribe if you're fascinated by that. But yeah, essentially, that was quite a short one today on the history of the letters P and H and why they make the F sound, because they slipped from the pronunciation of a P to that F over time as languages are constantly changing. And so therefore, we're now left with this legacy of having the PH there, which is really pointless in the sense of spelling, because it'd be easier, much easier to learn English if you spelled photo F-O-T-O rather than P-H-O-T-O. But if you're interested in history of languages and linguistics, it's actually super cool that we never had that spelling reform, because what it means is you can see really quickly and almost instantly which words come from Greek in English. Because they've got the PH when we should, if we were being logical with our spellings, just have an F. But we don't, and that's really cool, even though it's hard to learn. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that one today, guys. I will catch you soon. Have a lovely day. Bye.